Today, we'll be going over which one of the primary antagonists or one of the main antagonists of Jujutsu Kaisen, Mahito and Geto within Volume 0, can violently assault Jujutsu sorcerers with the most efficiency. If you like this video, please remember to like or subscribe, and let us get into this battle between two hypothetical JJK pixels who are on my screen, who I will never interact with, as my mental state continues to spiral down into an infinite regression of reaching higher and higher likes. So, hit that subscribe button. It's right on my page. You can't miss it. I'm telling you to do it now or else. To start off with this topic, we need to go over the primary racist, or Geto, one of the most racist characters within Jujutsu Kaisen, calling those who he doesn't believe are up to his standards monkeys. As I say in this tone of voice, he probably would in a Black Lives Matter protest. He is able to fight and beat up people like Volume 0 Yuta before Yuta is able to fully unleash Rika's power. This Yuta is basically a baby when it comes to Jujutsu sorcery, only learning how to manipulate cursed energy, and had only used Rika as effectively as he was in his fight with Geto for 4 or 5 minutes. It is to be noted that Rika and Yuta are both getting faster and stronger throughout the fight. As Yuta learns more and more about cursed energy, he's able to get faster and faster, which allows him to be more effective and to become a greater assaulter of cursed spirits than Geto is. Both of them are able to battle it out, and Yuta, even though he is relative to Geto, would have killed him if not for his sword breaking, as shown in the fight. For people on the slower side, this would mean that Geto, after Yuta gets stronger, is unable to match him and needs to use maximum Uzumaki, as after Yuta gets faster, Geto does not try to physically engage with him anymore, and he backs away from the conversation and the confrontation and decides to chuck his basically Jujutsu Kamehameha, however you pronounce it, at Yuta. He ends up losing this clash of pure masculinity and calls Yuta a womanizer, as Yuta raises up Rika into hitting off one of the biggest blasts that has been shown within the series, only being rivaled by the GOAT Ryu Ishigori, who is stated to have a higher CE output than him, meaning he is able to unleash more masculinity than him all at once. After this, we know that Geto also has this ability called Curse Spirit Manipulation. This allows him to violently assault curses, then he takes them in. This ability allows him to use not only the curse's abilities, but also sick curses on people, like a gang member who catches you and your whole family lacking. He's able to chuck almost thousands of curses, in fact it's shown to be more than 3,000 at people at once. He states himself, quantity over quality. This Jujutsu technique, as stated by Kenjaku, allows him to take over nations, because really, who can match up with multiple invisible beings rushing into you all at once, apart from me? This ability will be trouble for whoever he fights, and if you hold this, let's just say mentally challenged belief that Yuta got weaker from Volume 0, you could hypothetically scale Geto really high. Whenever Yuta is able to overpower Geto's blast, he goes into a binding vow with Rika, which is basically just him unleashing the limits of cursed energy, which allows him to clash with Geto. This doesn't put Geto anywhere relative to this blast, seeing as his whole body gets torn apart by it. However, it is to be noted that if he didn't split his curses up into multiple pieces, then Geto would have won this blast. If you cannot read, and you think you'd be interpreted as him just chucking 2 Uzumakis at him, then that's up to you. However, the clear context is clearly just Geto overpowering his blast. So, if Geto is able to chuck more masculinity at Mahito before Mahito can do anything in response, then, like any true person who wields bombs, he will win this fight, or so you thought. Apart from this, Geto really has no decent speed feats, apart from perception blitzing and being up a Maki who's weaker than, like, Goodwill Yuji, and he also beats a Panda. But then again, Panda's only won one fight in the series, and that's against someone who literally can't go outside. Apart from this, you could argue Geto is stronger than Gojo with this statement about how Geto will not pick fights that he can't win or he isn't confident he can win. However, we know that his confidence is very misleading, and his confidence doesn't usually lead him to like very successful outcomes. For example, his fight with Toji. He tries to engage Toji and proceeds to get violently and brutally assaulted by the guy he considers a monkey. It's like you being a racist and getting beat up by a black person. It's poetic, in fact. However, apart from these two things, we need to get into Mahito's scaling, seeing as Geto dies right after this, and he doesn't really have much chance to show any more feats. It is to be noted he should be stronger than people like his hidden inventory self, and if you believe the mindless interpretation of how his hidden inventory self would be equal to Gojo, and Gojo would be above hidden inventory Toji based off of Toji's own statement, then you could also do that. However, within my Toji vs Yuji video, I think I've made it quite clear what I think of the Sorcerer Killer Toji Fushiguro. Onto Mahito's scaling. Mahito is a curse who is initially described as a child. His ability allows him to put his hands on people and violently contort their bodies to the level where they are unable to be healed even by Sukuna's reverse curse technique. Mahito also has this rapid rate of development that many in the series can match. He's even made the leader of Jogo's group, not because of his strength alone, rather it's also because of his ability to continually grow. For example, he goes from being massively, and I mean massively, relative to this startup series Yuji, to being able to go relative with Yuji, who's not only gained more moves, right, but this Yuji has also done Black Flash, where he excretes black cursed energy out of his body upon impact, which multiplies his AP, or for the nerds, attack potency, by 2.5 times. Aside from this, Mahito, in terms of the speed department, he should be at least relative or above Yuji. The reason I'm saying he should be relative or above is not only because whenever he fights Yuji, most of the time he's toying around, he doesn't genuinely think of Yuji as a threat, and he's more just trying to torment Yuji because he doesn't like him. And as a true breeder of chaos, just like me, he likes to troll. And people who like to say, oh my god, he's getting reacted to by Todo. Todo's a Hanami rival. My response is I find their address. This interpretation is completely stupid, and being an African myself, I need to put any of these mindless jujutsu claims about magic to rest, as no one knows more about magic than I do. Seeing this, we know that Mahito cannot be hurt by conventional means. You need to either hurt his soul or beating up to the point where he's unable to physically reform, or he's unable to use cursed energy to reform his body. Even if he's unable to use cursed energy to reform his body, that will not make him die. Rather, it will just put him out of the fight for some time, and he'll come back eventually, just like Jogo did. However, aside from this mindless ranting that I'm doing, we haven't actually fully covered his speed yet. Mahito is able to easily ragdoll the likes of depressed emo guy Yuji. Whenever Yuji goes really emo and goes stupid, go bonkers, whenever he's fighting against Mahito, We know that rage is an important trigger for sorcerers and allows them to reach higher levels than they would usually. And since we know that Yuji at this point should be an elite sorcerer since he's on par with people like Nanami, Yuji should be able to use this cursed energy that he's getting from becoming a raging monster to actually just beat up and become stronger than he was before. Now that we've gone out of the way with base Mahito being at least on the low end relative to Yuji when he's holding back, right? We also have Mahito whenever he goes into his ISB form. This makes him 200% with the exact numbers stronger than he was before. It allows him to become so durable that Yuji's Iala magic is unable to get past him. As well as the fact that Yuji is getting overwhelmed to the point at which his attacks cannot even reach Mahito. Mahito also has several other abilities like Domain, which Suguru Geto, the monkey killer, is unable to gain. Though Geto is in possession of a maximum technique, domains are usually referred to as the peak of Jujutsu sorcery, with maximum techniques being only second to them. So, seeing as Mahito has a maximum technique and Geto doesn't, that implies that Geto has less knowledge of cursed energy than him. As well as the fact that Mahito has also done Black Flash. He's excreted the black from his body, but Geto has not. So, this is clearly showing a very large gap in terms of cursed energy knowledge. Now, where does Yuji scale? Unlike Mahito, Yuji goes on to find more people after his little scrap with Mahito. This Yuji becomes mentally and physically disabled. He's unable to fight as effectively, and he basically becomes, no joke, suicidal. He doesn't think he deserves to live, and because of this, I think he should be mental nerfed, seeing as a depressed emo child, if he's unable to get his head in the right mental state, he will be unable to fight as effectively. So, something that is to be noted is, after Shibuya, whenever he's fighting someone like Yuta, he should be massively weakened. Against Yuta, Yuji is able to flex his Jujutsu muscles by being able to take on Yuta multiple times. Even though he was unable to box with someone like Naoya, he's able to keep up with Yuta, dodging and blocking his attacks, and throwing a car at him, while constantly evading Yuta to the level where Rika has to get involved. Many people like to argue that Yuta is holding back. However, nothing implies this, and they are quite literally coping. Since nothing implies Yuta holding back, Yuta should also have no motive to be holding back, seeing as he's in a binding vow to kill Yuji, as well as the fact he's trying to get Yuji to the meeting point in which Megumi will meet up with him, before someone like the Jujutsu Society comes and pulls up on him, seeing as they don't like emo vessels around here. Now, it is to be noted that Yuji, within this fight, he's getting underestimated by Yuta, like a lot. However, after Yuta initially begins to underestimate him, he begins to take Yuji seriously, and he is still unable to have much more performance or much better performance than he was before. Yuji is able to tank attacks from Yuta's sword strikes. He is also able to tank his kicks while weakened. This same Yuji would have gotten one shot by Mahito at the start of their fight if he was actually being serious, which further gives credence to Mahito holding back. Now, with Mahito's speed out of the way, well, we can get into AP. But hold the phone, I know you thought I'd move on there. We need to get into where Yuta scales. Now, this is going to be some of the most controversial takes that I've ever had on my channel. However, I believe this Yuta is stronger than the one in Volume 0. My reasoning is, one, he has a domain, the other Yuta doesn't. That would imply he's not only trained a lot, but his cursed energy manipulation is also improving, which would also increase his strength. Two, we know that you can grow within fights by learning more about cursed energy. So since Yuta had only started fighting with Rika for 2 minutes when he was fighting against Geto, this later on Yuta should be much stronger, which would mean that he would also beat Geto even worse than he did before. So, since this Yuta is faster than the one that fought Geto, and the one that fought Geto is faster than Geto, you should see a little bit of a scaling chain forming here. In terms of AP, Mahito is able to touch people without consent and manipulate their souls and their bodies in ways that is physically impossible. For example, he turns Junpei into a literal frog, and Junpei can't do much about it. So the same would apply to Geto in this instance. Geto would have no form of resistance against Mahito's attacks. He would have no way of defending them. We don't know if he defends his soul with cursed energy like Nanami does. So if he doesn't, then it's kind of bad for the monkey killer. As well as this, we should also just have to know Mahito can also amp his speed by using the goat legs. Or Mahito can just pull up into his ISB form and just become 200% stronger and flatten Geto. So, as the thumbnail suggests, this fight is not fair. Geto has no way of killing Mahito, no way of getting past his domain, which is faster than anything in Geto's arsenal, and any of Geto's techniques can literally, and I mean very completely literally, get caught in Mahito's domain no matter how many he summons, and all of them will instantly die. So, in conclusion, Mahito, the guy who fights with his hands, the guy who probably has an assault warrant for touching so many people without their consent, wins this fight. If you like these type of videos where I get to ramble on a bit more, please remember to like and subscribe and help me reach 300 subscribers. I need to feed my ego and become the greatest YouTuber of all time. Aside from this mental rant, please remember to watch my other videos. Turn on the notification bell if you want to be notified whenever I go on a maniac, idiotic rant like this again. And this has been Glitch, and I have disappeared. Iyala, iyala!